On February 24, 2016, Oman Air executed a wire transfer to Air France, KLM. The transaction totaled $75 million. The money did not purchase a Boeing 787. It did not secure a terminal gate. It did not pay the airport authority for physical infrastructure. Oman Air paid $75 million for an invisible rectangle of airspace over West London. They purchased a single morning arrival slot at London Heathrow Airport. Aviation relies on massive, heavy, tangible assets. Jet engines cost $30 million apiece. Terminal complexes require billions in capital expenditure. Global supply chains dictate fuel and catering operations. Yet the single most lucrative asset in the modern airline industry is entirely intangible. It is a promise of time. It is the regulatory right to touch down on a specific strip of asphalt at a specific minute. London Heathrow operates as the most constrained, highly demanded aviation hub on the planet. 2 parallel strips of asphalt process 480,000 flight movements a year. Physics and wake turbulence dictate an absolute hard limit. The airport caps out at 40 to 45 takeoffs and landings every hour. The physical mechanics are uncompromising. A heavy Airbus A380 displaces massive amounts of air. The trailing Boeing 777 must wait for that turbulent air to settle. If it flies into the wake, the aircraft could literally flip over. You cannot safely compress the arrival sequence any tighter. Heathrow operates at 99% capacity. There is zero margin for error. A single delayed catering truck creates a cascading failure across the entire daily schedule. Demand for access to the United Kingdom's primary global gateway vastly outstrips the supply of tarmac. Current runway supply covers a mere 90% of recorded airline demand. Incoming aircraft are routinely forced into 4 holding stacks over London. They burn thousands of pounds of fuel while circling, waiting for a literal gap in the concrete. This intense scarcity weaponizes the market value of access. An operating slot at Heathrow transcends logistical necessity. It operates as a tradable, high-stakes financial instrument. The pricing mechanics of this secondary market defy conventional corporate logic. In 2015, Scandinavian Airlines transferred slots to American Airlines for $60 million. In 2020, Air New Zealand liquidated a single slot for $27 million. Slot valuations fluctuate based on the precise time of day. Midday pairs depreciate by 30% compared to early morning arrivals. Mid-afternoon slots drop a further 20%. These transactions reveal a fundamental breakdown in traditional free market expansion. An airline looking to launch a new daily service to London cannot simply buy an airplane, hire a crew, and market the route. The operator must acquire the right to land. They pay a capital premium that obliterates the route's profitability before a single ticket is sold. For foreign carriers, this capital requirement acts as a formidable barrier to entry. For the incumbent operator British Airways, this scarcity produces an insurmountable fortress. The British flag carrier controls exactly 50% of the landing slots at London Heathrow. International Airlines Group, IAG, the parent company of British Airways, presides over a monopoly. It dictates the rhythm of the entire airport. Holding the keys to the world's most lucrative international routes, British Airways benefits from a grandfathered regulatory framework. It secures their dominance, but the fortress walls designed to keep competitors out simultaneously trap the airline inside. The monopoly slowly suffocates British Airways' capacity to evolve, expand, and compete on the global stage. British Airways did not always possess such absolute command over Heathrow. The current 50% monopoly materialized through calculated corporate acquisition. It culminated in the 2012 buyout of British Midland International, BMI. Prior to the merger, BMI operated a vast network of medium-haul and long-haul routes. It held 11% of Heathrow's total slots. It complemented British Airways but diluted its total control of the hub. Lufthansa owned BMI. Lufthansa bled capital trying to maintain profitability in the hyper-competitive London market. The German carrier eventually surrendered. They sold BMI to IAG for £30 million. In the aviation industry, £30 million registers as a rounding error. It is less than half the secondary market value of a single prime Heathrow slot pair. IAG Chief Executive Willie Walsh did not want BMI's airplanes. He did not want BMI's branding. He orchestrated the acquisition explicitly to absorb the landing rights. IAG systematically stripped BMI of its identity. They absorbed its aircraft. They immediately terminated its entire long-haul route network. It was a localized monopoly grab. European Commission regulators intervened. They recognized the immense anti-competitive threat of the merger. To finalize the deal, regulators forced British Airways to surrender 14 daily slot pairs at Heathrow. The requirement was designed to facilitate new market entry. Virgin Atlantic's Richard Branson seized 9 of these pairs. He launched Little Red. This was a short-haul domestic network linking Heathrow to Edinburgh and Aberdeen. Virgin designed the routes to feed connecting passengers onto its own long-haul flights. It was a direct assault on the British Airways monopoly. The endeavour quickly collapsed. Virgin Atlantic could not make the unit economics work against the massive scale of British Airways. Little Red bled cash. It shut down completely. British Airways simply absorbed the remaining demand. They solidified their absolute grip on the domestic feed. Following the BMI acquisition, British Airways consolidated its operations into Terminals 1, 3 and 5. The airline initiated a massive strategic realignment of the acquired assets. They weaponized their newly acquired slots. They systematically executed a geographic pivot. They moved away from the Middle East and Africa. They targeted high-yield transatlantic and Asian markets. Look at the terminated BMI routes: Damascus, Khartoum, Tehran. These routes lacked the premium business class demand required to justify burning a Heathrow slot. British Airways retained only the highest performing BMI links, cities like Dublin, Amman and Beirut. The airline deployed those freed up slots to launch new routes optimized for maximum yield, expanding into high-value markets like Austin and Seoul. They aggressively targeted the premium leisure sector, pointing their aircraft toward luxury vacation hubs like Ibiza, Santorini and Mykonos. The network overhaul fueled an era of immense transatlantic dominance. Flights to the United States generate extraordinary profit margins. They account for 44% of British Airways' total capacity beyond Europe. They supply 4.5 million seats annually. The monopoly secured the kingdom. But controlling half of the world's most constrained airport extracts a staggering operational tax. Securing the dominant position at London Heathrow exposes British Airways to a massive vulnerability. They are at the mercy of the pricing power of the airport's operator. Heathrow Airport Limited runs a monopoly infrastructure asset. The airport extracts immense capital from the airlines trapped on its runways. Passenger charges and landing fees represent a critical battleground. This fundamentally alters the economics of British aviation. Heathrow enforces the highest passenger charges globally. The airport capitalizes on its unassailable market position. The current average fee sits at £28.46 per passenger. Heathrow proposes increasing this figure to £33.26. The funds are earmarked to finance an initial £10 billion expansion phase. IAG and Virgin Atlantic vehemently oppose the price hikes. They argue the exorbitant costs transfer directly onto consumers. Willie Walsh publicly decried Heathrow as a greedy monopoly hub. He warned that the 28% proposed increase by 2027 destroys the competitiveness of the British aviation sector. Continental competitors operate in entirely different financial realities, heavily regulating their charges to stimulate growth. Heathrow, however, acts with impunity. Economic modelling quantifies the exact damage this infrastructural bottleneck inflicts on the market. In absolute terms, passengers pay a £200 premium on long-haul return tickets. The cumulative annual cost extracted from consumers due to Heathrow's capacity restrictions reaches £2 billion. British Airways capitalises on these inflated yields. The airline enjoys elevated margins on its protected routes, insulating itself from low-cost carriers who simply cannot afford a $75 million slot acquisition just to enter the market. But these high yields mask a severe underlying vulnerability. The airline's growth operates under an artificial ceiling. To retain historical rights to a Heathrow slot, international regulations dictate an airline must operate a flight in that slot at least 80% of the time. Failure to meet this threshold results in the airline being immediately stripped of a multi-million-dollar asset. This generates perverse operational incentives. During periods of suppressed demand, an Airbus A320 will depart Heathrow completely empty. It flies to Cardiff, burns highly refined aviation fuel, pays crew salaries, and generates zero revenue. It serves no purpose other than logging a takeoff to satisfy the regulator. Operating an empty aircraft incurs immediate financial losses, but the airline gladly bleeds cash on fuel to avoid forfeiting a slot pair valued at up to $75 million. The systemic damage runs deeper. To utilize its massive slot portfolio efficiently, British Airways must maintain an extensive short-haul network just to feed connecting passengers onto its highly profitable long-haul wide-bodies. This forces them into direct, bruising conflict with agile, low-cost carriers operating efficiently out of unconstrained airports like Stansted and Gatwick. British Airways simply cannot compete on unit cost, leading to intense route churn and a purely defensive posture. Facing these unyielding limits, the airline initiated a massive withdrawal of long-haul services from London Gatwick to reinforce its primary fortress. Routes were axed or consolidated into Heathrow. They deployed those freed-up jets to intensify core high-margin routes like New York and Tokyo, utilising Heathrow's premium demand to offset their lack of overall volume growth. Yet this is a zero-sum game. Every new route requires the termination of another. Total capacity remains trapped 8% below 2019 pre-pandemic levels. British Airways manoeuvres expertly within its cage, but it remains a cage. While British Airways consolidates, a new breed of global aviation titans executes a masterclass in aggressive expansion. Anchored by state-backed mega-hubs in the Middle East and Turkey, carriers like Emirates and Turkish Airlines suffer none of the crippling constraints plaguing London. Unshackled by runway limits, they are surging capacity and vacuuming up the global transit passengers British Airways can no longer serve directly. The contrast delivers a devastating blow to the legacy carrier model. While these mega-hubs expand relentlessly, British Airways recorded a meagre 1% increase in total capacity in 2025. The global market expands. The British flag carrier stands still. The proposed solution remains mired in decades of political and financial paralysis. Heathrow champions a radical expansion plan, tunneling the massive M25 orbital motorway beneath active taxiways to construct a third runway. The financial burden equals the physical ambition. The estimated cost stands at £49 billion. This staggering sum has triggered open warfare between the airport and its largest tenant, as Heathrow plans to force airlines to subsidise the very infrastructure that undermines their pricing power through massively hiked passenger fees. Even if the £49 billion is secured, economists propose a far more aggressive solution for the new capacity, eliminating grandfathered rights entirely and demanding a blind slot auction. A slot auction would obliterate British Airways' greatest structural advantage. State-backed Gulf carriers with endless capital reserves would outbid them for prime departure times. The financial shockwave would decimate their balance sheet, and the £693 million explicit asset value of their slot portfolio would evaporate overnight. The third runway remains a mirage tangled in red tape. Until the asphalt lays flat, the 480,000 movement cap remains absolute.